Our next speaker will move on with some more specifics about dealing with positive ways of dealing with changing work environments. And so whether that means you're in business or industry, dealing with new research directions, or your current funding line isn't getting renewed, whether that looks like a change in boss or leadership, a new department chair, having to change institutions, or being redirected to new job descriptions. There are a lot of changes that we're facing in our work environment. And today, Dr. Jennifer Pollack from the University of Alabama will be speaking to us on those matters. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I can follow this. It was a wonderful, wonderful talk, and I'll do my best. So I think I can sum up everything that this whole symposium is about, is that how we learn from our experiences is that's what it's all about, and how we determine our future progress and where we're going to go. So the sooner you learn those experiences, actually the better you are. But actually recognizing them and being able to always ask yourself the question, what did I learn from this experience? And so that's kind of how I thought I'd put this together. I have a few examples of how I learned, or my environment that I was in, how I learned to solve some of those things. Who knows whether we solved them correctly or not, but it was our way of solving those challenges. And then how you can put yourself in the perspective of those challenges is relevant to others, just like what we've already heard from the previous other speakers. And then finally, how you actually can know yourself to be able to know how you fit in different situations. And I'm not a psychologist at all, but some of these things of how you can learn to know yourself is really valuable. As a scientist, I think we all ask questions. That's what we do for a living, and we solve problems. But a lot of times we don't look at the big picture and actually think about ourselves in that respect. So hopefully I can jog you to try to think about it that way. So early in my career, my husband is also a scientist, and he's sitting right there. And he's also the president of APS, so it's pretty exciting to be a part of that. But I can tell you that when we first met in college and started dating, we had absolutely no idea and no plan for any of this to happen in our careers. So we were very naive, extremely naive, and our very first challenge was money. We didn't do budgets. What are budgets, right? We were way too young to even think about that. And of course, we knew more than our parents, right? Don't we always know more than that? So what happened was we were both headed off to grad school together, and but the problem was we didn't have enough money, because back then stipends, we got $3,000 a year. A year, and we didn't have family money, nothing like that. So of course our car breaks down. We couldn't even afford to fix it. All kinds of things, and so it was pretty obvious one of us needed to quit their PhD program and get a job. So I did. And that was my decision, and that I wanted to do that. So what I did was I became a research assistant and made a little more money, not a lot more. But then what I decided to do was, we were fortunate enough to be at a university that offered a master's degree in the evening. What a really cool thing that university was very smart and did. And so I worked during the day, went to school at night, and then started all over that, 4 days a week. And then we planned it so that I would finish up my program when David finished up his PhD. So it made for a very busy time, obviously, but extremely stimulating, and we solved the problem. We then had enough money to live, and yet I still really wasn't putting my career on hold or my education on hold. I still was moving forward. So that was one way that we solved that problem. And then we went on to put each other through school and through our training periods. And we did that together. We went every place we went. It was always, how's it going to work out for each of us? And it wasn't that one of us was more important, should I say, or not. We didn't think about it that way. I know a lot of people in our generation did, that possibly the man should move forward. And I had a lot of women actually come to me and say, you know, you can never do this. You have to delay. It just isn't going to work to have two careers and both of you have everything. So I just didn't listen to them. I don't know why, but that's how I solved that problem, was I just didn't listen to them. So how do you coordinate all of these next phases in your career? So both of us wanted to have the best PhD program, the best both postdocs. What is the definition of this best job that you have to have? And each of us, you know, that's usually how everyone makes those decisions is, well, this partner had the best offer, so we need to go with that offer. Or for whatever reason that you define whatever best is. But I would say that the way to answer that question is it's the two or none rule. That how we defined best was that if it involved both of us, then that was best. So you either want both of us or you don't want either of us. Or that situation, that's how we always thought about it, was it's two or none. And, but we also realized that we had to have the best qualifications so that then we didn't hurt the other partner, if you will, or your family, or whatever situation that you're looking at. You always have to do your best. And so that meant that when we were in our PhD programs or in undergrad, we wanted to get the best grades. You want to get the best scores that you can. Whatever is defined for that situation, that you have to try to do it better. So then the next challenge was all the reality, right? You're not in training anymore, but it's the most fun to be in school. Stay in school as long as you can, right? It's a lot more fun. But you're just so anxious. You have to be independent. You have to start out. So here's some realities that hit us. And so it's trying to have these first choices, right, of what you think are your best jobs. So the first choice for the one spouse was maybe a bad choice for the other spouse. And then you find out you're pregnant, and then your spouse wants to get this job in another city, and then all of this happens in less than 12 months. So then what did we do? It was crazy. So all of that did happen to us, all in that time period. And so really our solution was that we just kind of said, okay, somehow it's going to work out. And it did. It always just works out. But it worked out because we wanted it to, not because it was just a compromise. We wanted to make it work, right? So it's the perspective of how you have it. And so that's why I say that with these new opportunities, because sometimes if you think this is the only way that you're going to have things work out for you, and you never even give it a chance for some other new opportunity to happen to you. And that's kind of where we were, was this new opportunity was something that we never would have thought about. And so that was when I was in a postdoctoral situation, and I happened into a very unique situation that never would have happened if you planned it. So, but then we were building our family, and parenthood and science, and sometimes they fit together really, really well, and sometimes they don't. So this first question, I get a lot. when is a good time to start a family? And so the funny answer is when you get pregnant, right? You start a family when you get pregnant. And actually, to tell you the truth, I think that is kind of how it happens. It just happens. You don't plan these things sometimes, and you just have to grow up, and it works out. So we had 3 kids in 4 years, and this was not easy to be then a full-time mom and a full-time scientist, and we had to figure out the optimum efficiency for the family. And are you being a parent, or are you being a caregiver? And then we also were mentors in our support system, and where are we in our environment to have a support system for that? And that we had to realize that moms are different than dads, and you have a different role in that. And I know our previous speaker talked about that he never cared for his daughter until she was 2. I was bound and determined that wasn't going to be the case. But David took on that role so easily and readily, and was really ready for it. And so usually what I always say is that the only way that I could have done all of this was because I did have a spouse and a husband that wanted to do all of this. So our challenge here was these 3 babies in 4 years, and how to make that be better. And your environment, the scientific environment that you're in, is actually how you allow to be able to do that. And the way I always perceived myself was that I was a much better person being a scientist mom than I was being either just a scientist or being just a mom. How I was made up, I was made to be a scientist mom. And so that's how you have to think about yourselves. You have to know that about yourself. But that doesn't mean that I didn't have an experience that was very difficult during that period when I was having those children. So that's the solution, is that some men get it and some men don't, is a reality check. Because I had a boss who was very difficult with this whole situation. And when I went back to work after I had my daughter, my 3rd child, and I worked easy 40, 50 hours a week, but that was not enough. And I worked at night after the kids went to bed. I was reading literature and all of this, but I just didn't work on Fridays. I just didn't go into work on Fridays. But I was working at home, and this allowed me to have just this little extra edge. And I had worked that out with my supervisor, but then my supervisor left the position. And so then I got reorganized into another group and had a new boss. I was the only PhD woman scientist of 100, and that should have told me something right there. So when it came to my evaluation, and he realized that I didn't work on Fridays, I didn't get paid for Friday, but that I didn't work on those Fridays, he said I made less widgets. Well, I didn't know that scientists were making widgets, for one thing. We weren't on a assembly line at all. And so I decided he just didn't get it. He just didn't get it at all, and was not very creative and not very enlightened, and that this was not in the world, if I'm not in the right place at the right time. And so this precipitated us to actually leave and want to move out of that situation, because it wasn't doing us any good. But then my husband was one of those men that did get it, because he was the guy who said, you have to stay in science. You have to do this, because this is what you're all about. So therefore, we just have to make this move out and move on. So then how do you balance the two? Balancing your love of science and your love of your family. So the answer to that, or my solution, was focus, focus, focus. And you always have to focus on what you're doing between those two things and how to become more efficient at everything that you're doing. I was Amazing Difference, and I never believed that I could do that because I'm not known for my organization skills. However, However, you know, when you're forced into those situations, you actually have to step back and look at how can I make all of this happen, because I just love everything too much not to make it happen. And then a word of advice during all of this was that nobody else was taking care of my CV. It wasn't their job. It was my job. I had to be responsible for building my CV. And if I was going to do better and get the best thing, I had to do that myself. I had to take it upon myself. And nobody, you know, if there was roadblocks, well, then I had to figure out how to get around them, not because somebody else was going to do that for me. So during, you know, your fellowships and your awards, you have to just apply and reapply. And don't forget to apply for those things, because you'll never get them if you don't. The publications, like what was said before, you know, we always get a lot more rejections, and eventually you get them accepted, but it just takes longer sometimes. So you always have to keep submitting it. And most of the time it's harder to get your paper accepted than it was to do the study. And then the grant funding. You need to do this when you're in high school, I think. You know, you need to, or grade school, you need to learn what are the skills for scientific writing. And you have to learn that yourself. You have to want to fine-tune all of that. And then your evaluations and promotions. So this is what I've always tried to live by, is don't give them reasons to deny you. So you don't put the roadblock there for them. And then you have to ask forgiveness and ask them to think about, well, you know, just don't consider that. You know, but I've done this. Well, if you have everything on top, then they won't have a reason to deny you. And these are our kids during grade school time, middle school, and they went to study section with us because it was their spring break, and they spent it at Busch Gardens. So where's the next? Okay. So because this is a resilience symposia, I feel like that even though most of us are resilient, I think we can cultivate it much more within ourselves and within our support groups. So you always have to realize that these changes in your environment are inevitable. So if you don't consider that it's never going to change, then you're not going to be as resilient as always thinking they are always going to change, and then how are you going to always adapt to it? And you always reflect on all those changes in a helpful feedback to yourself. So maybe you don't have that person right away that second. So whenever something happens, you want to reflect upon, okay, what did I learn from that? Or what can I learn from that? So that then I can, the next time or this time, as it's happening, you can do better. So one thing that you can try to think of is, who is the person who comes to mind that persevered in spite of adversity? So I think he's kind of like, you know, the gold standard. It's a good place to start. But sometimes, you know, he seems kind of netherworld too, because it's so much different than our everyday lives. So what you can do is try to think of the characteristics that are possible for you to imitate. And even Nelson Mandela you can take something from. But I'm sure that there's others in your lives right now or sitting right here. So the thing is that I think is always curious is that the scientists always want to know all these answers to these questions, but we are the problem solvers of the world. We are it. You know, we're the cool guys because we know how to solve problems. And it may not be that, you know, you're not going to get this postdoc or that postdoc, but you're going to solve the problem and you're going to figure it out, whether it's this, your career, or how to manage 2 careers, or how to manage having a child when you didn't think you were going to have a child, or whatever, and how to know yourself in that environment. So if you know who you are and how you adapt, or those small characteristics about you, if you can reflect on that within yourself, then you're going to understand the people around you better. I know it sounds a little weird, but then that will reduce your stress because you're going to know how to adapt, and you're going to get more done because you're going to feel empowered to be able to get that done and to be able to communicate. So Erica actually sent me this when we discussed on our conference call what we all were going to talk about. And so I thought I would just use this. And I've done some of these little tests that are, you can either do these freebies that are on the internet, or you can actually go to your resources that you were talking about. You know, these are readily available, and they're just you just have to just kind of answer them the way, just automatic answers that come out. And it's a way to get to know yourself and how you adapt, and then that's within your team. You can see how your team members all work together, and whether do you need a team that has all 4 or 8 or 10 different kinds of adapters, or do you want a team that's all alike? And so you have to figure out that yourself for how you work best in a team, because that's all that we all do. So if you look at the vertical axis here, this is your personality from outgoing to reserved. And so that means that you're a proactive type person or you're reactive. A lot of scientists are a lot more proactive, right? And then the horizontal axis here is your expression of your feelings. So are you very expressive, very people-oriented, you can talk to most people, or are you more task-oriented? So scientists can actually run the gamut here, but how you work together in a team and how you can adapt, because if you have everybody that's dominant over here that wants results and is very proactive in that respect, I don't think that's a pretty good team. It really isn't. So you need to know where you fit on this spectrum so that then you're going to know how you would work with another team member or your boss or your mentee. So if you can actually try to get some insight into that, it can help you in the long run. So my final slide is just that we all just want to be the best we can be.